Now, I know given recent news and the state of the world that this title probably wasn't the best, but it actually holds a lot of meaning for me, and it's something I consistently find myself revisiting, especially in recent months, so bear with me. In Sydney, there is this beautiful, beautiful coastal walk, one of many, that ends in Bondi Beach, depending on the direction you're traveling in. And somewhere along the way, there's a cemetery. It's called Waverley Cemetery, and it houses around 80,000 souls on a cliff top overlooking the ocean. And I don't know if a lot of you know this, but I used to frequent that cemetery during sunrise and sunset, and I would sit on this little bench amongst this vast space of piercingly white rows and rows and rows of tombstones, and I would just contemplate the complexities of life and death while I listened to the waves crashing along the shore. And it sounds really selfish, but that place always humbled me and provided a sense of gratitude that I got to exist and live and breathe another day, to make another mistake, to make another change, to be better. So anytime I found myself being ungrateful over something trivial, or if I was confused about my place in the world, I would reflect on that cemetery and the inevitable. My feelings around death really shifted during my undergrad after I took 2 courses. The first one was gerontology, so we explored old age, aging, that huge life transition that you go through when things are beginning to gray and shrivel, and death. And I dreaded seeing it on my timetable. It was an 8:30 lecture in Warm M in winter semester, and if you went to Guelph, you know that description is the spawn of Satan. I remember getting to class, I took off my scarf, I unzipped my coat, and there was a guest speaker at the front of the room. And she goes, "Every single one of you in this lecture hall is going to die." Now you can ask any one of my friends or a lot of my family, but I'm always that person that says you're gonna die anyway. So use the 5-second rule and eat that thing off the floor. Make mistakes, ask that guy out, do whatever you want, because we are all going to die anyway. But hearing it from a complete and utter stranger really drove it home for me. She later passed out these next of kin cards and implored us to investigate our deepest fears and unpack why they're our deepest fears and how we can overcome them. And I know it's super irrational, but to this day my deepest fear is that no one is going to come to my funeral. And I know what you're thinking, your loved ones and your family and the people that got to experience a life with you in it will be there. But I think the deeper meaning that I was trying to get at was, did I hurt too many people? Was I kind enough? Did I cause more harm than good? And would all of those errors I made in judgment and in decisions impact people negatively enough that they didn't care whether I lived or died? I kept thinking about the legacy I was leaving behind and how I wanted people to remember me. And in doing so, I consistently kept coming back to that dash in between the year you entered this world and the year you exited it. You know, that dash that represents a pause or a break or a deeper meaning in literature. What is that deeper meaning for my life? What does that dash encompass? Is it love? Is it laughter? Is it experience? Is it trauma? Is it pain? And I realized that I don't need to be one thing, and nobody does, because life isn't linear. It's supposed to be all of those things I listed wrapped up in a bow. But after wrapping up this bow, I realized that I had to unravel it. And instead of thinking about what I'm leaving behind, look in front of me. Think about how I want to remember my own life instead of how I want people to remember it. The other course I took in university was Psychology of Death and Dying. And we looked at the funeral system, we looked at cost, we looked at the grieving process. And one of the chapters discussed the regrets that people on their deathbed tend to have. So as a final assignment, our prof asked us to plan out our deathbed scene. They asked us to really sit ourselves in that bed and zone in on the sense, our sights, our sense of feel, our sounds. And something just wasn't connecting with me about that. I found myself sobbing and weeping in my room about the idea of death, but I was struggling to put words to paper or to computer. So I messaged my prof and said, hey, I don't really identify with this final assignment. Would you mind if I just planned my own funeral? And they were like, yeah, go for it. Do what you need to do. And a lot of the side notes and the textbooks and the footnotes kept saying that families had a really hard time planning the funerals and going through that sort of the process on top of grieving. And I remember planning all of this out. Again, I was still weeping and sobbing. But after I submitted that assignment, I felt a sense of peace. Just that in the off chance that I went before my parents, there was one less thing they had to stress about because everything was planned. I had pictures, I made the slideshow, I put music on a memory stick, I left my passwords and all these notes. And right before my 22nd birthday, nothing went as planned. My plans fell through and I was like, you know what? It's on my bucket list. I've always wanted to skydive. I'm gonna do it. I had this little box. I brought it downstairs and I tried to talk to my mom and I said, if anything happens to me, everything you need is in this box. Of course, she dismissed the conversation because no one wants to think about burying their child. But eventually she came around. And I think that the more we talk about death and realize that it's inevitable for all of us, the easier it becomes. And I'm not saying to dismiss your grief, especially in a time like now when our heroes and individuals that represent possibility and our dreams being materialized are passing through a global pandemic, when we're also trying to just plead and beg and receive basic human rights. It's a lot. So your feelings are valid. Everything you're experiencing is valid. But I want these times to be moments where we really unpack the concept of death, and that it doesn't have to be this thing that we shy away from. It doesn't have to be daunting and scary. And even if it still is for you, that's entirely fine. I kind of lost my train of thought. And I'm grappling with my own emotions and my own feelings around this giant shit bite dumpster fire that is 2020. But I just hope that if there's anything you take away from this video, it's that dash. It's about living without regret, doing everything that makes you happy, finding something to live for, to smile about, to laugh about, because your last breath isn't guaranteed. Well, it is guaranteed, but you just don't know when. Tomorrow is not guaranteed, and no one is invincible. So I ask, if we're all gonna die anyway, what is one thing that you can do right now within your means that is going to make you happy? Think about it.